Hey guys, I'm Tyler and welcome to the DIYTyler YouTube channel. I've gotten a couple questions recently asking me whether it's better to cut stock and then flatten it, or whether it's better to flatten it and then cut up your stock. I would tend to say that it's almost always better to cut it up and then flatten it because you will lose less material. This is a tabletop here, not a piece of dimension lumber that a gentleman at work asked me to flatten for him because, as you can see, it's got like a 3/8 inch warp over the width of the tabletop. Now I'm going to choose to cut this down and then flatten the pieces because I'll lose so much less material here, and let me show you why. First off, if you were not to cut this down, this is 28.5 inches wide, you'll be pretty hard pressed to find a piece of machinery that can flatten this without cutting it down to begin with. But if you were not to cut it down, you would lose at least all of this material, which is a hair proud of 3/8 of an inch. And when you're done, you'd be left with this for your slab, which is under 1 inch versus 1¼ inch that you see here. So what we're gonna do is cut it down right on the seams, run it through the planer, which once you cut it down right here, you can see how much little material you're gonna have to remove to get it flat again. So we'll cut it into 3 sections, run it through the planer and get it nice and flat, and glue it back together again. The same method applies here if this is a giant slab or if this is a piece of dimension lumber that you need to get flat. Let's say you have a long piece of stock this way and it's got this giant bow in it. The best way to get rid of that is to cut it into sections and flatten it. If you were to try to flatten it with this giant bow, you'd be down to a very thin piece of material, something you always want to keep in mind. Let's get to flattening this thing. I do want to point out about how careful you need to be with making that cut, because look how unflat this is on the tabletop and how much right there it actually pulled away from the blade when it fell down. So you want to make sure you hang on to that thing, go slow, and turn the blade off as soon as you possibly can. We'll make one more cut now, flipping this edge over up against the fence. You guys obviously know that I like to woodwork, but did you know that I really love my morning cup of coffee, medium roast to be specific, every day without fail. So I am super excited to introduce Trade Coffee to you folks today. Trade is an online service that we have been using for a bit, and you actually take a quiz there and it matches the perfect bean to the flavor that you are selected for. Order that up and it shows up at your door without having to take the time to go into the store, which is awesome, and you are ready to go. Use the code DIYTyler at checkout for 50% off your first bag plus free shipping. Follow the link down in the description below. Take a quick pause here so we can really understand why it's beneficial to cut down first. So here's our 3 pieces. As you can see right here, when we plane this one down, we'll lose maybe 1/8 of an inch off this piece of material instead of the 3/8 inch plus that we were going to lose if we planed down the whole slab. So there we are with one pass on the planer, and I think we are good. We'll flip it over and do the bottom, so that's nice and flat, and then we'll joint the edges again so we can get a straight glue up. Just like that, we're ready for glue up. I am going to be using Titebond 3 as the glue for 2 reasons. One, it is 100% waterproof, so if this ever gets wet, it is going to be in a machine shop. And 2, it gives me a little bit more open time if I need a little extra time to wiggle things around. Like I said, this is a great example of why you want to cut and then flatten versus flatten and then cut. As you can see, this was the line that I drew if we would have flattened with the full width slab, but in cutting it down, we actually lost only somewhere between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch off the thickness of this tabletop, so my coworker is going to be very pleased. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I certainly hoped it helped some of you guys out that were questioning the proper way of flattening a slab, dimensional lumber, or even a tabletop like this. Please hammer that thumbs up button if it did help you out, and make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss when we upload a new video on the DIYTyler channel. I'm DIYTyler. You guys have a good one.